I'm sitting down in the shade at the library. Everything else you see in this video is already recorded. But I wanted to stop off one last time before I went home and tried to cut it together and make some sense of it, to say this third video in the series is a kind of orientation. We've been down in it in the sense of walking. Today we drove. The walking may come later, because I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of where you were. Delivering the future. That is pretty much the job that we're doing here. Considering the past. Living in the present. Delivering the future. I'm not really sure what I'm doing today. But I have some ideas. So they don't want you to walk up this road. They don't want you to be able to get out of town, headed east, unless it's on the interstate, which is over there. So I won't say that I've never trespassed on railway property, in spite of the fact that it is highly illegal. And that the Burlington, Northern, and Santa Fe Railway apparently has their own police force. Railroad bulls. And in fact, this inability to get outside of Holbrook is one of the major features of the town. At least that's what I've decided after 20 years of study. If the first video was the introduction, and yesterday was kind of down in it, this third day is an orientation video. So standing right here, we're at the far eastern edge of downtown, and we can legally go no further. In addition to it being the eastern edge of downtown, it's sort of the southeastern corner of the town. That's the fairgrounds, of course, the county fairgrounds. And here we're facing west. The way we walk, the way we have been walking. So a couple of weeks ago, for some reason, the phrase "all hat and no cattle" came to me. So a long time ago, my family came from over there. By over there, I mean Chicago. It's the place I was born and spent most of my first decade. But eventually, we packed up and we came out here. We did drive right through Holbrook before there was an Interstate 40 on Route 66. But when I say through, I do mean through. It was just another late night crawl through a little town. We were on our way to greener pastures, up the mountain, toward a prettier little town, which is where I spent much of the next decade. And I wouldn't come back here in return for many decades after that. The Arizona accent and the Arizona lifestyle, it's a mix between the Californian and the Texan. We are right in the middle of all that. We are the flyover, and more toward the Texan side of things. The phrase, all hat and no cattle, sort of stuck in my brain a few weeks back. And as I turned it around in my head, I started to realize that my situation was rather different. In my situation, I'm all cattle and can't afford the hat. And in my brain, when I was reformulating that, I was thinking of cars in terms of cattle. So one of the things I wanted to do today was to begin to introduce you to the cattle. This right here is the red pearl, named after the color of the paint. I bought the red pearl new 10, 12 years ago. It's very likely it and its predecessor will be the only new cars I ever buy. The reason I bought this particular model was that when it came to cheap subcompact cars, this one had the most legroom, and at least as important, it's all-wheel drive. Now that cuts into the fuel mileage a little bit because you're essentially always in four-wheel drive, right? But it was worth it to me. I wanted, at the lowest price possible, a new, somewhat roomy, by subcompact standards, vehicle that would stick to the pavement no matter what condition the pavement was in. Now, the fact that it's all-wheel drive also means that theoretically I could take it off-road. But that's not the point of it. The point is sticking to the pavement, even if it's glare ice. And this is an ideal vehicle for that purpose. All right. Introducing you to the herd. We're done with that for the moment. The fairgrounds are also the end of Hopi. Hopi is one of the two major streets in Holbrook. We're driving along Hopi from the east to the west right now, and this is the major intersection with Navajo Boulevard, the other major street. If we take a little jog on Hopi, we're back in more familiar territory. That's the door where I worked, as you'll recall. This is where I sang about propane. Right here, we're about a half a mile from the ranch, which means that if I walk this far and then go back home, I'll have walked a mile. And so on and so forth. The rest area is at the other end of Hobie Boulevard, down there, past the TVs. From the house to the grocery store and back is about a mile and a half. This is what the land out here looks like. This is what the land out here looks like, with pretty much nothing on it. Little pockets of residential, but for the most part, wide open spaces, or if you prefer, wasteland. So in addition to needing to understand that Holbrook is an interstate town, you also sort of need to understand that Holbrook is a 3-exit town. So if you're coming to it on the interstate and headed east, you already sort of know what that exit looks like, because that's where the rest area is, at the far end of Hopi, exit 285. And I wanted to take you up here because this is the first exit that you would encounter if you were westbound. And this is also the end of Navajo Boulevard. That other big street I mentioned. If you get off at this eastern exit for Navajo Boulevard, you end up directly on Navajo Boulevard. Entering Holbrook on historic Route 66. So I showed you that spot with the train where they kind of block you from going any further east unless you're traveling on the interstate. This is a good example of how they block you from going any further north. I think this ranch out here is called the Jeffords Ranch, owned or was owned by one Bill Jeffords, who I knew briefly, personally, back in the day. And I will say that in my estimation, he was a friend to the working man. But for the most part, like the rest of the ranchers around here, he really didn't want people poking around on his ranch or on the roads that led to it or over it. And so, even though such entry points do exist, they're very well blocked off. Just like the railway headed east. I don't really understand why things are that way. Why it's almost impossible to get out of Holbrook on 4 wheels or 2 wheels or on foot, unless it's on one of those 2 big roads. And I also don't really understand why that's such a big deal to me. I guess there's no such thing as a bike lane in Holbrook, and there's no such thing as a walking trail. There is no path. If you want to get out from the center of the little town, you've got to do it on the large roads. Or you've got to do it by trespassing. Somehow that seems monstrously significant to me. But I might be the only one. I wouldn't drink the tap water in Holbrook. There's probably nothing wrong with it. But I'll leave it for showering and washing clothes. And when I want to drink a bottle of water or make myself another quart of coffee, I'll use this water. Drill me a hole with a barber pole. a well water hole. In this case, so to kind of wrap up this looping, elliptical, poetistic, belletristic orientation video, this right here is the middle exit. The one that, in my experience anyway, gets used the least, unless you're headed for a specific gas station or a specific fast food kind of joint. So I'm thinking that right now, this wind sound is our friend. When I'm out walking along the road, that puffy wind sound is often the enemy of good audio. And as it kicks up, maybe that's becoming true again. Maybe we're getting those distorted little noises. But I think for the most part, we're in and out of the wind right here. So we can enjoy the sound of it.